I woke to the faint hum of the coffee machine, its rhythm oddly comforting yet slightly off, as if our home itself sensed the tension lingering in the air. She wasn't beside me, not yet, though the bed still smelled faintly of her perfume. I had grown accustomed to the warmth, the soft weight of her arm across my chest, but this morning, even that familiar comfort seemed distant. I poured myself a cup, black, no sugar, staring out the kitchen window at the pale sunlight spilling over the quiet street. Our life had seemed perfect. Friends admired us, neighbors smiled as we passed, and our laughter once echoed through these walls. But today I noticed cracks. A photograph on the mantel, slightly askew, the note she left on the fridge unread. Small things, insignificant, yet my stomach twisted as I wondered if they meant more than I dared admit. "Morning?" I called softly, half hoping she would answer from the bedroom. Silence. Only the tick of the wall clock responded. I traced her footsteps through the apartment in my mind. The hurried brush of hair, the casual hum of a song I didn't recognize, the faint scent of perfume mingling with the air. Each detail should have been mundane, comforting, but instead it gnawed at me. Was she avoiding me? Did she sense what I had been hiding, or what she herself was hiding? A flicker of unease grew into a quiet anxiety. I sipped my coffee, bitter and grounding, and told myself I was imagining it. Yet the shadows of normalcy in our home felt distorted now, stretched thin over a foundation I realized I had never truly understood. I lingered in the kitchen, staring at the note again, the one that simply said, "Don't forget to call." Its brevity suddenly felt heavy, loaded with unspoken meaning. I wondered if she already knew more than I knew, or if I would soon discover the truth hidden behind her disappearance. Her absence hit me before the day had fully begun. I checked the bedroom again, half expecting to see her curled under the covers, hair tangled, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Nothing. The sheets lay cold, undisturbed, and the soft echo of silence felt heavier than any shout. I ran my fingers along the nightstand, tracing the edge of her perfume bottle, and wondered if I had ever truly noticed her, or only the version she let me see. I remembered yesterday, her voice clipped, brushing past mine in the hallway as if she were avoiding something, or someone. A glance that lingered too long at her phone, a subtle frown when I asked a question I now can't recall. I had shrugged it off, telling myself she was tired, distracted, or merely human. But now those fleeting moments pressed down on me, whispering accusations I didn't want to hear. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. Her cup, still damp from last night's tea, sat abandoned, the lipstick mark faint but visible. I reached for my phone and scrolled through unread messages, some from friends, some cryptic texts I had never read aloud. I wondered which ones she had hidden from me, which ones I had ignored. The thought gnawed at my chest, a small, persistent ache. In my mind, I replayed her smile, the one that used to light up the living room during our late-night conversations, the one that seemed genuine even when the world was harsh. Today I couldn't remember it clearly. Was it always real, or a mask she wore while hiding things from me? The question stung more than I expected. I rose and walked through the apartment, touching surfaces she had touched, hoping for a sign, any trace of life that would reassure me. Instead, I found silence, shadows stretched oddly in the early sunlight, and the unshakable sense that the world had shifted. Something vital had slipped through my fingers, and I was only beginning to realize the depth of what I might have missed, or what she had carefully concealed. I sank back into the chair, gripping the edge of the table. My chest tightened, a cold knot forming as dread seeped into every thought. She was gone, yet I could feel her presence everywhere. In the whispered memories, the half-smiles, the secrets she carried. I knew somehow that the day's unraveling had only just begun, and that nothing would ever feel normal again. I realized she wasn't coming back before noon. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee, the sunlight no longer warm, but harsh, spilling across the floor like an accusatory spotlight. My heart raced as I ran through the apartment again, checking every room, the bedroom, the study, even the small closet where she sometimes hid when reading late into the night. Nothing. No note. No sign, only silence that pressed against my eardrums. I grabbed my phone, dialing her number with trembling hands. Rings, straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice tight, trying to sound calm but failing. "It's me. Are you okay? Where are you?" The words felt absurd, inadequate, as if the very act of asking was admitting I had lost control. I called my sister, my closest friend, even our neighbor downstairs. No one had seen her. Panic began to coil in my chest, sharp and insistent. Memories of her leaving in a rush, her distracted glances at her phone, the small arguments we'd brushed aside, all of it now felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to assemble. By mid-afternoon, a knock rattled the front door. I opened it to a man in plain clothes, badge glinting under the sun. Detective Harris introduced himself, calm yet firm, notebook in hand. He asked the usual questions, her last known movements, our routines, anyone who might hold a clue. I told him she had gone out early, that I had spent the morning at home, insisting on my alibi even as I felt the cracks in my memory begin to show. Harris's eyes were sharp, perceptive, not missing the slight hesitation, the way my fingers drummed against the doorframe. He noted my responses, scribbling details that made my chest tighten. The questions became pointed, each one nudging me closer to panic. I felt the walls closing in, the apartment suddenly small, every shadow stretching like an accusation. I wandered into the hallway, peering out the window at the quiet street, wishing someone would walk past, someone who could tell me this was all a misunderstanding. But the street remained empty, the stillness oppressive. My mind spun through scenarios, abduction, accident, her walking away, but every explanation seemed both possible and terrifying. As Detective Harris left to follow leads, he paused at the door. "We'll find her," he said, though his tone carried an edge that unsettled me. I nodded, but the words felt hollow. Alone in the hallway, I sank to the floor, my phone clutched in my hands. The panic was no longer a whisper. It had grown, sharp and insistent, leaving me aware that the normal life I had taken for granted might already be gone. Calls from friends and relatives came one after another, each conversation a thread pulling at the fabric of my composure. My sister's voice trembled over the line. "Are you sure she left of her own accord? I mean, she wouldn't just vanish, would she?" I hesitated, repeating my alibi almost mechanically. I had been home all morning alone, nothing unusual. Yet even as I spoke, a nagging doubt clawed at me. Next, our neighbor, Mrs. Calder, mentioned something that tightened my chest. "I saw her yesterday. She seemed tense, whispering to herself in the garden. You know, like she was keeping something from you." Her words lingered, twisting in my mind. I remembered those small arguments, her subtle frowns, her eyes darting when I approached. And suddenly they seemed larger, heavier than I had allowed myself to feel at the time. I sank into the armchair, replaying conversations with her. "You never listened to me," she had said, her voice low, almost accusing, the night before she disappeared. I remembered my reply, defensive, sharp. "I always listen. You just think I don't understand." How trivial it had seemed then, yet now it echoed like a warning I had ignored. The thought of manipulation began to haunt me. Had I been blind, or had she been hiding something I couldn't see? Detective Harris returned briefly, notebook in hand, eyes scanning the room as if weighing every detail of my story. "We've spoken to friends and co-workers," he said, tone neutral but sharp. "Some things don't align with your timeline. I'll need you to go over everything again." The words hit like a hammer. I repeated my alibi, but each word felt hollow, as if even I wasn't fully convinced. The house felt smaller now, constricting, every shadow cast by the afternoon sun seeming to whisper secrets. I remembered fleeting moments, her leaving messages on the fridge I never read, her sighs in the kitchen when I thought she was alone. The line between victim and perpetrator blurred in my mind. I leaned back, heart hammering, aware that everyone's whispered suspicions, friends, relatives, neighbors, were converging, pressing toward a truth I wasn't ready to confront. And as the detective departed again, I realized the investigation was no longer just about finding her. It was about unraveling the life we had carefully constructed, thread by thread. Detective Harris returned late that afternoon, a stack of folders in his hands. the weight of authority pressing against the apartment walls. "We found her emails," he said, voice calm but precise. "Some of the messages suggest she was anxious, worried about something you may have said or done." He slid a folder across the table. I felt my chest tighten, the paper trembling slightly under my fingertips. I flipped through her emails, each line pulling me deeper into a past I thought I had known. There were notes I had never seen, texts hidden behind casual subject lines, phrases like, "I don't feel safe," and "I can't trust anyone right now." My mind raced trying to reconcile these words with the woman I thought I understood, the life we shared that had seemed solid. Harris watched me carefully, not intervening. "These aren't accusations," he said. "They're observations. But they do raise questions about your alibi." I forced a laugh, a thin, defensive sound. "I've been home all morning. That's the truth." My voice trembled despite my effort to appear calm. The detective's eyes didn't waver. He knew when someone was hiding something. I found a note tucked between the pages of her notebook, written in her precise, flowing hand. "I can't tell him everything, not yet." My stomach twisted. Had she feared me? Or someone else? I swallowed hard, trying to steady the growing panic, telling myself that I hadn't done anything wrong. But the shadows in her words gnawed at my certainty. I remembered her glances the night before, her sudden silences, the way she sometimes avoided my gaze. Each memory now carried a weight of suspicion, a hint that our marriage had always been more complicated than I admitted, even to myself. "Look closely," Harris said quietly. "The small details often reveal more than the big events." I did, examining timestamps, overlooked replies, hidden drafts. A pattern emerged, subtle but undeniable. She had been tracking something or someone. And in that moment I felt an unfamiliar tremor of fear. I realized the house wasn't just silent because she was missing. It was silent because secrets lived here, lurking in corners I had never inspected, in messages I had never read. The truth, whatever it was inching closer, and I was suddenly aware that my own words, my own alibi, might not hold up when it finally arrived. By the next morning, my world felt unmoored. Detective Harris returned with a folder heavier than before, containing surveillance footage and witness statements that immediately pierced the fragile structure of my alibi. I had said I'd been home all morning, yet timestamps showed my car parked outside a cafe across town, just for 30 minutes, a detail I had forgotten, or perhaps hoped no one would notice. I stared at the images, heart pounding, every rationalization crumbling. The footage showed my face alone, yes, but the witness statements complicated everything. A barista recalled me speaking on the phone with someone in a low, tense voice, my expression unreadable. I had told myself the call was work-related. Now Harris's gaze pressed into me, unyielding. "You claim to be home," he said evenly. "Explain this," I faltered. Words came slowly, defensive, hesitant. I stepped out briefly. Nothing else. My mind recoiled into memory, dragging fragments of the marriage to the surface. Her sharp remarks during arguments, the subtle ways she manipulated our conversations, the silent power plays I had dismissed as normal friction. Did I push her too far? Did she feel trapped? And yet her messages, the ones Harris had shown me yesterday, hinted at fear, not anger. The contradiction gnawed at me. I paced the living room, running my hands along the furniture she had touched, trying to reconstruct the invisible patterns of her day. The apartment felt tighter, walls closing in. Shadows pooled in corners, stretching unnaturally, accusingly. The past we had carefully concealed. The arguments, the manipulation. The moments I had laughed off, now pressed against me with relentless force. I thought of her sudden silences, the faint frowns, the long pauses before she answered my questions. I had convinced myself they were trivial, but now they seemed deliberate, intentional, almost prophetic. Every word I had dismissed as inconsequential now carried weight, evidence, implication. My own recollections betrayed me. The very act of remembering felt like digging a deeper hole. Detective Harris left the room briefly, and in that silence, I confronted the fear I had been avoiding. I realized that the cracks in my story were more than minor inconsistencies. They were fractures in the foundation of our life, exposing truths I wasn't ready to face. Had I truly been the devoted husband I pretended to be, Or was I complicit in a darkness I refused to acknowledge? I sank onto the couch, head in hands, chest heaving. The surveillance images, the notes, the hidden messages, they weren't just evidence of absence. They were evidence of me, and in that moment I felt the fragile mask of control slipping. My alibi, my version of reality was no longer enough. The truth, in all its raw, moral ambiguity, loomed closer, and I knew that the unraveling had only just begun. Detective Harris handed me a small, leather-bound journal, its edges worn, pages filled with her handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, as if breaking the seal would shatter something delicate and irrevocable. The first entry I read was dated months before she disappeared, detailing small but persistent unease. I feel watched, even in my own home. He says it's my imagination, but I don't think it is. A chill ran down my spine. Had I dismissed her fear, or had I unknowingly contributed to it? The words revealed patterns I had never noticed, entries describing arguments I had forgotten, moments when she retreated silently into another room, and subtle manipulations I had thought playful now seemed strategic. Defensive, a survival mechanism I had failed to recognize. I flipped pages, each confession pulling me into her private world, her voice growing louder in my mind than in real life. A flashback surfaced, her laughing lightly at dinner, then glancing at her phone with a shadow crossing her face. I had asked her if everything was fine. She had smiled and said yes. Reading her words now, I understood the tension behind that smile, the weight of secrets she carried alone. Harris interrupted my immersion with a gentle knock. "We spoke to someone close to her," he said, motioning to the doorway. In walked Claire, a friend I had only met briefly at parties. Her eyes were tired but clear, focused. "I knew her well," she said softly. "She trusted me with things she wouldn't say to anyone else, not even you." Claire's presence added context to the journal. She spoke of whispered fears, of subtle control, of moments when the wife had questioned herself, doubted her own instincts to protect me from truths she feared I wouldn't accept. The contradictions were stark. The woman I thought I knew clashed violently with this private reality. I sank onto the couch, holding the journal close, my mind spiraling. Had I been blind or deliberately blind? Every memory of her laughter, her complaints, her quiet mornings together now felt layered with secrets I had never unearthed, with fears she had borne alone. Harris observed quietly. "Understanding her world helps, but it also complicates things," he said. I nodded, aware that the more I learned, the more distant she seemed, and the more my own memories became unreliable. The truth was fragmenting into multiple conflicting realities, hers, mine, and the one that only the investigation could piece together. Alone again, I traced my fingers over the journal cover. The dark corners of her life were no longer hidden, and I realized with a sinking certainty that the coming revelations would force me to confront not just her secrets, but the depth of my own culpability. The apartment felt smaller than ever, each shadow stretching like a finger pointing toward my guilt. Detective Harris returned mid-morning, carrying more files and a map dotted with timelines and annotations. "We've cross-checked your statements with friends, colleagues, and neighbors," he said, voice measured but firm. "Several things don't match. Minor inconsistencies, yes, but enough to question the entire timeline." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my shaking hands. "I don't know how that's possible," I stammered. The rehearsed defense I had relied on for days crumbling under scrutiny. "I've told the truth. I was home. I wasn't anywhere unusual." My words faltered as Harris raised a hand. "We've spoken to people you didn't mention," he continued. "Some saw you leaving, some saw you alone. Others said your behavior in the days before her disappearance was tense, controlling even." He didn't accuse, but each word landed like a weight on my chest. I retreated into my own thoughts, replaying conversations and interactions with colleagues, neighbors, even casual acquaintances. Each memory twisted under the light of suspicion. The friendly smiles I thought I understood now seemed rehearsed, layered with judgments I had ignored. Had I been unaware, or had I chosen not to see? The detective's voice drew me back. "And then there are the inconsistencies from your friends. Their observations don't align with your account. They noticed arguments, avoidance, subtle conflicts you didn't report." I clenched my fists, Feeling panic coiling tighter in my stomach, I remembered Claire's words from yesterday. She had seen her fear, her isolation, the moments when she doubted herself to shield me from truth. I had convinced myself those were minor grievances. Now, those grievances combined with the detective's methodical findings painted a far darker picture. Harris placed a folder on the table. There's also evidence of her trying to contact someone unknown. Calls, emails, messages deleted before you could see them. It's subtle but persistent. Suggests she may have feared more than just a strained marriage. My pulse quickened. Fear, guilt, and anger mingled inside me, each thought fracturing further. Did I contribute to her fear? Was there a motive I had never considered, hidden deep beneath our daily routines? I sank into the couch, gripping my head. The web of lies wasn't just hers or mine. It included everyone around us, everyone I thought I could trust. And now, every corner of the apartment, every echo of her presence, whispered the uncomfortable truth. The full story of her disappearance was far darker, more convoluted than I had imagined. The investigation was no longer linear. It was a tangle, a labyrinth of half-truths, omissions, and concealed motives, and I was trapped at its center. The day dragged like a storm, each minute heavier than the last. Detective Harris returned with a USB, placing it on the table with a quiet authority. This contains security footage, call logs, and timestamps. Review it carefully, he said. My hands shook as I inserted the drive, watching the screen flicker to life. The footage was subtle at first, small moments captured on neighbors' cameras. My car leaving the driveway, me walking briskly toward the cafe, then returning home with my expression tight, unreadable. But then came the undeniable proof. A series of calls between me and her phone the day she vanished. She had tried to reach me repeatedly, and my responses, or lack thereof, painted a damning picture. I could feel the walls of the apartment closing in, the air thick with accusation. My mind raced through justifications, half-truths, and memories. Every interaction I had had with her in the past months replayed like a relentless loop. Arguments I had dismissed. Moments when I had asserted control without considering the cost. The subtle power dynamics that had silently governed our marriage. Rage surged first, raw and desperate. How dare she? How dare this evidence be stacked against me? But it quickly twisted into fear. Fear of judgment, fear of what I might have overlooked, fear that I had contributed to something irreparable. And then came remorse, creeping and suffocating, settling in my chest with a weight I could no longer ignore. Harris watched silently, noting my reactions without interruption. It's not about accusation right now, he said softly. It's about understanding what happened. I wanted to scream, to deny, to erase every moment, but the facts stared back at me from the screen, relentless and unyielding. I sank onto the couch, face in hands, heart pounding. I remembered her journal, Claire's warnings, the whispers of friends and neighbors. Every revelation from the past days converged into one unbearable truth. Our life had been a web of control, fear and hidden resentments, and my role in it could not be denied. The breaking point was no longer external. It was internal. I was trapped between the knowledge of my failures and the unknown fate of the woman I had vowed to protect. The apartment felt suffocating, every shadow a reminder of secrets we had kept, every corner echoing the consequences of choices I had ignored. And in that moment, I understood with a chilling clarity, there would be no return to the life we had known. The unraveling was complete, and the path forward, whether toward justice, revelation, or despair, was irrevocably mine to face. The apartment felt colder than ever, the late afternoon sunlight casting long shadows across the floor. Detective Harris returned with a thick envelope, placing it carefully on the table. "These are the last pieces," he said, voice measured. "Her bank statements, travel records, and messages we couldn't trace before. They reveal much more than we expected." I opened the documents with trembling hands. Her meticulous records detailed months of planning, secret calls, and coded messages to friends I had never known. She had prepared for something, though I couldn't yet decipher the full scope. Fear and foresight intertwined in her actions, a mixture of caution, self-preservation, and subtle rebellion against the very life we had shared. Harris's gaze was sharp, but not accusatory. She kept secrets, he said slowly. Some were about her safety, some about what she discovered in your behavior. The combination suggests she feared not just the world outside, but also what she could no longer confront within her marriage. I sank into the chair, head spinning. My own recollections, the arguments, the quiet threats, the manipulations I had considered normal, now collided with these revelations. The moral complexity of our relationship became clear. I had been both protector and perpetrator, both lover and oppressor. Each memory, each gesture I had believed innocent, now carried layers I had ignored or refused to see. Among the documents was a letter she had never sent, addressed to me. Her words were sharp, vulnerable, and haunting. I tried to reach you, I tried to trust you, but I could not survive what I felt in silence. I hope someday you understand why I disappeared. My chest constricted, the weight of regret pressing down. I realized the full extent of her fear, her courage, and the boundaries I had crossed without noticing. Harris leaned back, summarizing the evidence. The truth is fragmented. She acted out of fear, but also strategy. Your role is undeniable, yet so is hers in maintaining a life where secrets became necessary. It's morally gray, but the pieces fit together now. I closed my eyes, listening to the silence of the apartment, the echoes of her presence lingering in every corner. The story was complete, yet unresolved, the threads of love, betrayal, and fear interwoven so tightly that no single perspective could claim full clarity. For the first time, I acknowledged the enormity of what had occurred. The investigation had uncovered facts, but the emotional web, the human consequences of choices, concealments, and fear, remained hauntingly intact. In the quiet, I understood that some truths are never simple, and that the echoes of her life and secrets would reverberate long after she was gone. The apartment was nearly silent, every corner heavy with the weight of revelation. Detective Harris stood near the window, notebook in hand, while Claire and a few of her friends lingered quietly, their expressions guarded but expectant. I felt the full force of their presence, a living reminder of the consequences I had ignored for too long. Harris spoke first. We've pieced together the timeline, the messages, the patterns of behavior. The law will decide the formal consequences. But justice isn't always simple. His eyes met mine, unwavering, assessing not just facts but my reactions, my guilt, my fear. Claire stepped forward, voice steady yet edged with sorrow. She trusted some of us to protect her secrets. Some of those secrets revealed truths you should have faced. What happens now will reflect the choices made over months, years, not just this disappearance. Her words struck like a hammer. The weight of my failures pressed down with an almost physical force. I wanted to argue, to deny, to defend myself, but the evidence, the journal, the hidden messages, they all converged into an unshakable reality. My alibi, my justifications, even my love were fragments in a larger, darker truth. I had wielded control. She had navigated fear. Both of us were complicit, and now the consequences were unavoidable. Harris continued, calmly laying out the path forward. Law enforcement involvement, interviews, documentation of both guilt and mitigating circumstances. Claire and the others would testify, not just about her disappearance, but about the psychological toll, the manipulations, and the hidden suffering. I realized with cold clarity that justice would not be a simple verdict. It would be the culmination of moral reckoning, public and private. Alone in my mind, I felt the intertwining of fear and remorse, the bitter recognition that some forms of justice are intangible. Revenge, if it came, would not erase the shadows I had cast. Punishment would not untangle the emotional web we had spun. I was left to reckon with the truth, the life we had built, the control I had exercised, the love that had coexisted with fear. All of it now lay bare. As Harris and Claire departed, the apartment seemed emptier than ever. The echoes of her presence lingered, a reminder that some consequences are permanent. I sank into the couch, understanding that justice had been served in fragments. But the ultimate reckoning, emotional, moral, psychological, would remain mine alone, haunting every thought, every shadow, every silent corner of a life irrevocably changed. The apartment felt impossibly quiet. Each shadow stretched long across the floor, as if echoing her absence. I wandered from room to room, tracing the edges of spaces she had once occupied, her presence lingering like a ghost I could neither touch nor dispel. The journals, letters, and hidden messages lay stacked neatly on the table, their revelations etched permanently into my memory. I sank into the couch, staring at the empty chair across from me, the one she had always occupied during late-night conversations. Silence had become a tangible force, pressing down on my chest with the weight of every secret I had ignored, every subtle manipulation I had dismissed, every moment when I had failed to see the truth. Her absence was more than physical. It was the hollow reminder of everything lost between us. Detective Harris's visits had stopped. The formal investigation concluded, but the psychological unraveling persisted. I thought of Claire and the others who had witnessed her courage, her fear, and the secrets she had entrusted to them. Their words, like the journal, echoed in my mind. Trust broken, lives altered, control wielded and resisted. I realized that justice had been delivered in fragments, but the emotional reckoning remained ongoing. I wandered to the bedroom, the bed still made, the sheets untouched. Memories of laughter, whispered arguments, fleeting touches, they all pressed together, contradictory and unyielding. I wondered if she had ever truly trusted me, or if the woman I loved had been partially a construct, designed to navigate a life she could no longer endure. The thought left a bitter taste, mingling remorse and longing in equal measure. Outside, the world moved on as if nothing had changed. The street was quiet, neighbors unaware of the intimate collapse that had occurred within these walls. Yet inside me, everything had shifted. I felt smaller, diminished by the weight of truth, haunted by the knowledge that some consequences could never be reversed. Some shadows could never be erased. I picked up the journal again, opening a page she had marked with a careful hand. Her words were simple yet heavy. Even in absence, my choices matter. Even in silence, the truth persists. I understood, finally, that the story was not just hers or mine. It was ours. A tangled web of fear, love, and power that would linger long after voices were silenced. As I closed the journal and set it on the table, I felt the finality of her departure, yet also the enduring weight of what remained. The apartment, the evidence, the shadows, they were all reminders that the truth once revealed leaves a lasting echo. Alone, I realized that some endings are never complete, and that silence can speak louder than any confession, leaving a haunting aftertaste that never fades.